Hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another update. So in today's update I want to take a little bit of a trip to the past. Now, we do have a lot of brand new information as well, but really just talking about the unemployment lawsuit situation. For anyone that happens to be new here, huge welcome. The big recap to basically what's going on is that back when unemployment ended early, there were several states that decided to come out and essentially sue their state in order to try to bring back the unemployment and all of the payments retroactive that was originally due. The great news is that there were several states that actually thankfully won their lawsuit, and then there were obviously a lot of states that did not actually win their lawsuits, and then there's a lot of states that actually haven't really even made a decision yet to this very day. So the big thing is I really just want to talk all about that because we do have some new decisions that have now officially come out, and whether this is good or not so good really just depends on the state that you're currently in. So it's going to make a lot more sense. So as always, we're going to get started, but as always, maybe real fast, before we begin, 10 seconds, consider smashing the like button because it is always greatly appreciated if you enjoy videos like this. Consider subscribing and hitting the bell for similar videos. We will be making a transition to talk a lot more about just general finance topics, but at the end of the day, these are going to be topics that talk a lot more about putting money inside of our pockets. So I think it's hopefully insightful, if that's something of interest. Of course, you guys can decide. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, personal thoughts, or maybe any particular information that you might have about your particular state, because a lot of this information right now is very subtle, underground, and very low-key, so it can be a little bit difficult, but we try our best. And I think at the end of the day, everyone else would really appreciate it. So with that being said, let's get this video started. So the 16 states that have some kind of lawsuit going on or had some kind of lawsuit going on, as just a very quick recap, I'll just read it right here, is going to be in Indiana, Maryland, Oklahoma, Texas, Florida, Ohio, Arkansas, South Carolina, Tennessee, Louisiana, West Virginia, Missouri, Alabama, Iowa, New Hampshire, and Arizona. Now, the two states that have actually won their lawsuit is going to be in Maryland and Indiana. In fact, one brand new information that actually just happened a couple of days ago is really going to be in Maryland. So the story is that the really great news is that in both of these states, they did win their lawsuits. It was confirmed. People got their payments. It was retroactive. But the biggest thing is that what's new is that Maryland now is actually opening another brand new lawsuit as of just less than 1 week ago. And what this brand new lawsuit is about, it's really just essentially about trying to demand past payments for people that might have been owed payments but for reasons have not gotten payments. It sort of relates to the unemployment, like just reformation or expansion about trying to improve the unemployment systems, but it goes on even further. The long story short is that there were a lot of people in Maryland, and technically in many other states as well, but just Maryland happens to be the one that we're talking about that is taking action, that there were many people within that state that essentially tried to apply for unemployment and might have even actually been qualified, but for a whole bunch of various reasons never actually physically got their unemployment. Then there were a lot of people that never even got a decision about whether or not they even qualified. In other words, what ended up happening is that they went just totally silent. So because of that reason, what this lawsuit is about is essentially just trying to demand them to not only just speed up the process, but to also now officially, because they've taken so long to make their decisions, or that they just didn't even have a reason. So they had a decision, but just not a clear reason for their decision, that they want to request them as just, I guess, damage, or to make it back to them. They want them to pay them the unemployment benefits. And that's what that lawsuit is really about. Now, the next two states that we're going to talk about is really going to be in Arkansas and Oklahoma. There were some people that kind of asked about what happened there. It's kind of a confusing topic. Basically, what really happened there is that both of these two states won their lawsuit, but their governors are essentially just taking a little bit of a very passive step to prolong the case. What this essentially means is that sometimes you can end up in a case that maybe you win the lawsuit and the right to do a certain something, but that other side decides to just not do that particular something. So maybe, in other words, what's really going on is that they're kind of just fleeing the scene a little bit. They haven't really taken a lot of action. What they have said is that they're trying to essentially just come up with excuses or words to why they cannot physically deliver. In other words, is that they've won their lawsuit, but there's a little bit of a battle to actually plan the logistics to actually physically deliver it. So hopefully that kind of clarifies about what's happening there, since I know there are some people that are waiting. They know that there's been a victory, but they're trying to physically get the actual prize money for it. And the answer is because there's a lot of just difficulties and just communication that's happening there right now. Now, we finally do have results from the next couple of states, and this is probably the not so good news part of this video, so we're just going to get right through it. But essentially, there are 3 states that have now officially released information over the last month, and essentially the first state is going to be in Idaho. They actually, sadly, lost their case with Governor Little. The second state is going to be in South Carolina. They also, sadly, lost their case with Governor McMaster. And then the last state is going to be in New Hampshire, which sadly also lost their case with Governor Sununu. So essentially, Idaho, South Carolina, and New Hampshire, those were actually the 3 states that actually sadly did not win their lawsuit. And because of that reason, I think that maybe the only thing we can do forward from here is that we're just going to have to find other means of survival. I know it's very difficult. I know it's been very rough to take in. I know it's, might even be a little bit unfair, the fact that there are some states that do a particular something and other states that maybe don't, but it is just what's physically happening, and I figured it's just important to communicate it right now. Now, there are 2 states that ended up kind of losing their lawsuit, but having an appeal filed, whether this was on the side of the governors or on the side of the people, to try to essentially change up the decisions that we don't know. These 2 states are Oklahoma and Ohio, which are basically still in their appeal process. I do believe one brand new update is that it was announced that in Ohio, they're hoping to eventually now release decisions relatively soon. Now, I will say is that they did not give a specific time frame, so we don't know what that actually physically means by soon. Many people speculate it means by the very end of this year, but we don't really know right now, and I kind of don't want to give an absolute confirmed answer, but they were probably the state that at least had some talk compared to Oklahoma that actually really truly went silent. So we don't know what that means by soon, but that's just what they've said as just the messenger to really communicate what's happening there. Now, beyond that is the 4 states that do have their lawsuit that is still continuing to this day, for just a whole bunch of different reasons depending on the state, is going to be in Tennessee, Texas, Florida, and Arizona. Those 4 states either made a decision or have not made a decision, or they made their decision, but then their decision was appealed, but then they kind of went silent, or they opened an additional lawsuit on top. So in other words, they opened a lawsuit, then they opened an additional lawsuit, and now they're still pretty much just waiting for decisions. Like, it's still an ongoing lawsuit. I do maybe want to talk a little bit about the Texas situation, and because I know there's a lot of people from Texas, and they are at the end of the day the largest, or certainly the most populated states of the states that sadly had to end their unemployment early. And what ended up happening in Texas is that they originally had the most recent hearing that they had pretty much happened around the very end of October. So I know it has been about a month now ever since that ended up happening. And the story is that they ended up having a lot of difficulties throughout the entire process. The first couple of supposed scheduled hearings, because again, keep in mind some of the hearings were postponed, but the first couple of supposed hearings that were supposed to happen there, they ran into a lot of essentially logistical issues to why they had to delay. So either because they didn't properly process the paperwork, I think many people believe that it's possible that maybe because the lawyer was someone that was still relatively new to taking a case of this scale, or just what this case essentially involved. So that was really what happened in the beginning. Then what happened afterwards is that they tried to organize additional hearings and cases, but then they had to try to just raise up funding to physically pay to fund the case. Then what ended up happening is that they ended up feeling, or they, according to what a lot of them have communicated, is that there was a little bit of a miscommunication that happened on social media about how they wanted to approach the situation. It is a little bit vague, but it is just what they've specifically said, and that what can be communicated best right now. So essentially what the story is that they did thankfully have their hearing, but ever since that ended up happening, they've kind of went relatively silent. But I do believe is that the last thing that they ended up saying was that they are hoping to release information specifically directly from the lawyers themselves. So I don't know if it's going to be something that's publicized right now anymore on news. I think that that's the big thing. I do believe is that the idea is that when they do come out with decisions, if they hopefully finally actually come out with decisions, because again, they haven't even given a time frame. They've basically just openly just said, we're going to come up with the decision, but we don't really know when that is. But they did say is that when that does come out, they're probably going to either release it directly from the lawyer, whose name is David Sibley, as we've, said before in the past, but just to put it out there in case as an, just to remember, or they're going to release it to social media. Essentially just a lot of the Texas unemployment social media pages. Of course, until then, I figured that at least we would just share something. So I know we want a decision. At least it means that, there's a chance. Obviously, it doesn't look as promising, but it is at least still there. And I figured that at least at the end of the day, it's just what has to be said. So hopefully that kind of clarifies about what's really happening there. But beyond this is that's what I really just wanted to share in today's update. So if you guys found that relatively insightful, I know there's a lot of mixed opinions. Feel free to comment if there are any. Maybe consider smashing that like button in light of support. If you guys haven't done so, consider subscribing, hitting the bell. And as always, feel free to comment any questions, thoughts, or information about honestly just really anything. So that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys made it to the end, huge thanks, and hope to see you guys next time. And also happy holidays. So that being said, yeah, see you guys next time.